What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and draft season is upon us. The NFL scouting combine rumors are swirling. The New York Giants are meeting with the top quarterback prospects. There's so many rumors about the Giants being interested in trading up, maybe even all the way up to the number one overall pick, which, as you know, would cost them an arm, a leg, and many other body parts that are necessary to human survival. But the Giants might just be willing to sacrifice those assets to go up and get the number one overall quarterback. And all these rumors, they keep swirling about, and now the Giants meeting with Caleb Williams, meeting with Jaden Daniels, likely meeting with Drake May and all the other top quarterback prospects. It's getting really interesting. Meanwhile, Joe Schoen, as we discussed in yesterday's episode, said he still has faith in Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback in 2024. Said that Jones is progressing well, should be able to do some of their spring training, and also should be ready for the start of training camp. So what's going on here with the New York Giants quarterback position? Not entirely sure. Maybe it's a lot of smoke screens. Maybe it's a lot of diversions, lying about one thing so that the Giants can position themselves to do another. It's getting really interesting, though, and I'm excited to dive into all of these rumors and all of this news surrounding the New York Giants and their hunt for a quarterback in the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, before we talk about some of those trade rumors that we were hearing, I want to kind of get your reaction to the Giants. Today, it was made official that they are interviewing Caleb Williams, the projected number one overall pick, USC quarterback. Everybody knows he's going number one overall, whether it's to the Bears and they just stick and pick, or if they trade out of the spot. Caleb Williams is the very likely number one overall pick. What do you make of the Giants scheduling an interview with him? Because I know that a lot of fans are taking away from this, like, okay, the Giants are firmly in the quarterback market. They are looking for a quarterback. But then others are saying they're just doing due diligence on all of the top prospects. What is your reaction? What is your take on the Giants interviewing Caleb Williams?
Well, look, it's certainly due diligence. I think they would be silly not to be interviewing these top quarterbacks. Obviously Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, we're going to see all of them do. I know the Raiders are interviewing Caleb and Jaden Daniels and, among many teams. So yes, like the Giants were always going to do this, but I just find it awesome that it's aligning with these reports almost seamlessly. 2 days ago, day ago, we're hearing that from Jordan Raanan. And look, I'm going to say this. Mike Garafolo is like one of the most connected insiders to the Giants internally, has been for a long time, is one of those guys with like an impeccable record of reporting facts. He's saying that there's an 80% chance the Giants draft a quarterback in the first round. Jordan Raanan is saying that multiple sources are telling him that if the opportunity arises, the Giants are going to consider moving up to get a quarterback. And look, the truth is simple. If they're considering it this heavily based on multiple sources that usually know what they're talking about, it's safe to say that if the chance arises, they're going to do it. And it's safe to say that they're already thinking about post Daniel Jones. They're thinking about what the future looks like, because we've broken this down 100 billion times. I don't think you guys need me to go through the cap space again. But if you really want me to, the Giants can save maximum of $30 million next offseason by releasing Daniel Jones and spreading the cap hit, the dead money over the last 2 years of the deal. They can add $30 million in free agency funds, add the quarterback, supplement those picks that you lose in trading up with that money. You still have your mid-round selections. I just wrote an article about Adisa Isaac from the Penn State, a pass rusher. There's a lot of great talent in this draft class. You get the quarterback, those mid-round picks, guys, that's where you build your team, man. Look at what the Lions did this past season. Aside from Jahmyr Gibbs, they got substantial value from their rookies. Substantial. The difference between a good team and a bad team is those mid-round picks pan out. Micah Parsons showed, imagine me a Micah Parsons. Micah McFadden showed a lot different, guys, a lot different. Micah McFadden showed some upside. Dane Belton had a couple of good moments toward the end of the season. Trey Hawkins, as a 6th-round pick, had some good moments. There's a lot of talent on this roster that I think is still underdeveloped, and we're still waiting to see if they can reach their potential. Last year's draft class, Jalen Hyatt, JMS, and Deontay Banks, in my opinion, that's a really solid draft class. That's a really solid group of players. We talked about, Ivan Pace, a guy that we wanted the Giants to draft. They didn't get him, and he ended up becoming one of the best linebackers in the game last season. There's so much value if you hit on those picks in the mid rounds, and ultimately the Giants have a couple of decent young pieces to build around. And that last quarterback pick can cover up a lot of issues, especially in a class as strong as this. But I think it would be stupid to ignore the signs, ignore the tea leaves, ignore all of the reports that are suggesting the Giants are looking to draft a quarterback. So if you're still on the Daniel Jones train and you're willing to ignore all the top insiders, all the people in the know, all the people that have sources, and ignore all of those reports, God bless you, man, and God bless Daniel Jones if he can actually pan out after all the adversity. And I want to get one thing straight though, because I think that there is a narrative going around that like we don't, where we blame Daniel Jones. I want to get one thing straight: the Giants destroyed any chance of Daniel Jones ever panning out. I don't blame Daniel Jones for the majority of what happened to him because the Giants did it to him. They gave him awful offensive lines, awful receivers, constant overturn at the offensive coordinator and head coaching positions. He was set up to fail since day one. And a lot of people will say, well, you can't move on from him. He was always set up to fail. We haven't given him this. We haven't given him that. There's no guarantee we're going to give him that in 2024. And for what it's worth, he's developed a lot of really bad habits from really bad coaching and really bad units and injuries because of our offensive line. I feel terrible for Daniel Jones because he was from day one set up to fail. And that sucks. And the Giants right now have an opportunity to reinforce their offensive line, put a quarterback in a position where he's set up to succeed and not have any bad traits coming into the NFL. That's the difference to me and why I think the Giants are going to pull the trigger if the chance arises. Again, we don't know what the Bears or Patriots will do. They could definitely just stick and pick. But if they want to move out, one of those teams is going to cash the hell in. And a team like the Patriots who could use the draft capital to reinforce their roster, the Giants could be a perfect team to move with. And the Bears, too. The Bears, if they want to trade back, like there's a world where we see the Bears move back to 6 and then use a first-round pick they get from the Giants and move back up to 3. And they end up with Jaden Daniels or Drake May and like 4 first-round picks from all the picks they have over the next 2 years, which is like if you want to build a roster and you want to continue reinforcing your team with cheap first-round talent, which is always a luxury, that's the way to do it. So I could see like a multi-team trade going down. It's going to be absolute mayhem. I'm so excited. The NFL Combine is this week. Lots of news. Teams, lots of players meeting with the Giants. Clearly, they're doing their due diligence. But, Anthony, I'll let you get your take in here. I imagine you probably assume it's also due diligence, but based on all the reports, you can't ignore the simple fact that the Giants obviously want to get to know these quarterbacks because they clearly want one.
No, I agree with you. Yes, it's due diligence. Last year, they also interviewed with the likes of C.J. Stroud, and they realistically were never going to draft C.J. Stroud. But when you're looking at it in a vacuum, picking 6th overall, you have to interview all of those top 10 players in this class. And Caleb Williams is firmly one of those players. If not, he is number one, right? Because we've seen players fall in the draft inexplicably before, and sometimes we've seen first-round prospects fall into the second round. So even if you're looking at it from the perspective of the New York Giants want to draft one of these top quarterbacks, it doesn't have to be at number 6. Think about Will Levis last year, projected number 5 overall pick, right? He was supposed to go top 10. He fell all the way to the second round to the Tennessee Titans. Now imagine if something like that happens this year, whether it's Jaden Daniels or it's J.J. McCarthy or it's Drake May somehow, right? You never really know in the NFL, and the NFL draft is such a random sequence of events taking place in 3 days. So you can have a guy that's projected to go number 1, all of a sudden he's number 6. Or you can have a guy who's projected to go number 3 in the draft. All of a sudden, he's number 47, right? So the Giants are doing their due diligence in the sense that they are looking at these quarterbacks with the intent of probably drafting one, in my opinion, based on all the rumors, reports that we've heard, based on what Joe Schoen has said. But it's not just due diligence about wanting to trade up because, yeah, of course we think that they're going to need to trade up for a guy like a Jaden Daniels. But we also heard last year that certain teams would need to trade up in order to get a guy like Will Levis. And instead, Will Levis went past everybody, landed all the way in the second round with the Tennessee Titans. So it's always possible, and that's why the Giants are doing due diligence. And even thinking back to what Joe Schoen said last year about some of the players that he was scouting, even though he knew he had no chance of realistically drafting. He said that it's important because if he does keep this job for that long, year 4, year 5, or maybe even earlier, if a player goes on the trade market or gets cut, it's nice to have some notes on this guy and have some scouting already done on this player so that when they are free agents or they get cut or they're on the trade block, you know who they are, you know what you like about their personality, what you don't, what you had as their strengths and their weaknesses. It's always good to meet with these players. It's a relationship business in the NFL. So Joe Schoen, knowing as many of these prospects as he can, whether he thinks he's going to draft them or whether he thinks he's going to sign them one day down the line potentially, it's just really important for him to do his due diligence, not only as a draft as a drafting GM, but in the future as a free agent signing GM. So there's many factors at play here, and there's many different reasons why the Giants would be interviewing all of these top quarterback prospects. But you do have to keep in mind that there are teams that probably won't be interviewing these top quarterback prospects. I don't know if the Arizona Cardinals are going to waste any of their interviews on Caleb Williams. Why would they? They don't need him. They're standing pat that Kyler Murray is their franchise quarterback. So they're a team that might not be looking at those quarterbacks, but the Giants are. And I think that tells you that they are in the quarterback market. Now, whether you believe that they're in the trade up to draft a quarterback market or not is a different side of the story, which we're about to dive into. But they are in the quarterback market. They are at least considering who these top prospects are, who should be number 1, 2, and 3 on our board, and who should go where. Is this guy really a first-round pick? Do we see something in his personality that tells us maybe we only take him in the second round? All those little things, that's what they're ironing out here at the Scouting Combine. And for what it's worth, we've heard a lot of discourse about Caleb Williams. Can he succeed in the NFL? Does he have the personality to succeed in a big market like New York, like Chicago? Can he realistically be a franchise guy due to his characteristics and his personality? We don't know the answers to that. We will never know the answers to that because we don't get to sit in a room and interview Caleb Williams on or during the NFL Scouting Combine. But these GMs, they get to do that. Joe Shane, he's doing that this week. He's going to be able to interview Caleb Williams and say, okay, I believe he can or I believe he can't succeed in this New York market. So that's really why the NFL Scouting Combine is so important, because Caleb Williams is not throwing the ball at this event. Drake May not throwing the ball. Jaden Daniels not throwing the ball. So we don't care about the testing and the athletic profiles and all the different measurables for these quarterbacks. What the Giants really do care about is who is the player off the field. Who is the person? It's not always about the player. So at the Combine, when you're seeing that the Giants are interviewing these top prospects, they're really trying to figure out, can this guy fit in our system, in our culture, and in our media market? And that's what they're going to determine with Caleb Williams after they interview with him. And I think that's a really important and underrated part of the pre-draft process. So that's my main takeaway from the New York Giants interviewing these top quarterbacks. It's, yes, due diligence, but it's also, are they trying to shape their board, figure out who's 1, 2, 3, who is draftable, who is undraftable, all those little things. And again, because they're in the top 10 and they are within striking distance of these quarterbacks, it's not just due diligence. It's studying these players to make sure that if we have the opportunity to draft one, we get the pick right. So I'm really excited about that. And I think that it's going to be really intriguing to see who else they put on this list, right? Maybe the Giants don't end up interviewing with Joe Alt, with Olu Fashanu. Maybe they don't interview the top offensive tackles. That's probably going to tell you that they're not going offensive tackle in the first round. So I'm just going to be keeping my eyes peeled and kind of staying locked into this information about who the Giants are and are not interviewing with, because I think that you can learn a lot about their pre-draft process and their plans for the draft through these interviews. But now let's talk about some of these rumors, Alex, because this is the really exciting stuff, right? We heard that the Giants, you mentioned it, Mike Garafolo gave them like a 76.9% chance, super random number, but 76.9% chance of drafting a quarterback. And then you're hearing from guys like Cam Marino and Peter King that number 1 overall pick is on the table in trade discussions. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have made that pick available. And then at the same time that rumor comes out, you're hearing a rumor that the Giants are the team to look at for a trade up. We heard the Atlanta Falcons a few weeks ago might be one of those teams. Then the same day that the number 1 pick reportedly became available, we heard the Falcons aren't interested in that trade. Now they're interested in Justin Fields. So you're hearing all these different conflicting rumors that support one but conflict another. But the one that's remained constant since like December, Alex, is that the Giants are interested in trading up for a quarterback. Like we heard Jordan Rannon of ESPN. We've heard Patricia Traynor of Sports Illustrated has said things about the Giants being interested in quarterbacks. We've heard so many of these plugged-in beat writers who do know what they're talking about for months now, hinting that the Giants are having these internal conversations and are looking at the draft board and looking for ways to trade up for a quarterback. And now we're finally seeing at the Combine that they're interviewing these players. We're hearing more rumors. It's just more fuel to the fire, and it seems like what was a theory a couple months ago is starting to become a reality, and it's really exciting. So Alex, kind of how are you feeling about all these different rumors sparking up right now? Combine starting. We're hearing that the number 1 pick might be available, and then of course we're hearing that the Giants have been really having discussions about potentially trading up for several months. It's just now that they're materializing in these conversations, but it sounds like they've been having these internal conversations for quite a long time. What are your thoughts and feelings on that? Obviously, we feel kind of validated because we're like, oh, we're right. We've been thinking this for a long time. But now that these rumors and reports are coming out, it's almost like there's just a lot more truth, in my opinion, to these reports.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of validity, from these reports and making us feel as though we were kind of onto something. But again, it hasn't happened just yet, so we have to see if it does. When it comes to the quarterback position, my take is simple, I've been arguing with people on social media like all week about this, and it's pretty much comes down to this. Some people believe that building a great roster is the most paramount thing. And, you have to build this elite roster like the 49ers, and then you have to find your quarterback after that. It is really, really hard to build a roster like that, really hard. And even if you do manage to build a roster as good as the 49ers, you're still going to get beat by the elite quarterback and Patrick Mahomes, right? That's the end all be all of my argument. Even if you have the best roster in football, Patrick Mahomes with no receivers is still going to beat your ass in the Super Bowl. That's the truth. So if you're the Giants and you're any other NFL team and you have a chance to go get a quarterback you think can compete with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl in the future, you do it. You freaking pull the trigger. You don't hesitate. You don't risk it. You be aggressive and you get the player you think Brian Dable is going to turn into a superstar. However, there is a lot of elements that go into that. And Joe Shane said one thing this yesterday that really stood out to me in that, he was talking about the offensive line and how the schemes in college football are kind of not built to showcase NFL level transitions. Like it's not really built for offensive linemen to be like ready to step in and be offensive linemen at NFL level on day one. But he said, like, because of that, we have to identify the character. We have to identify, them as people and their upside and tools. And I think the same thing applies for a lot of other positions, notably quarterback. Can you handle playing in a New York media market that is going to tear you to shreds when you have a bad game? Can you bounce back? Are you going to be the first one in and the last one out? Now, I think a lot of people out there would say, I don't know if Caleb Williams is that guy. I don't know if Caleb Williams is the guy that's going to stand up and take that level of brunt, just force from the New York media market. And by the way, last year, he fumbled 16 times. I don't think Giants fans are going to be pretty happy if he fumbles 16 times. It's going to remind us of Daniel Jones. I think we're going to tear him to shreds. Can he handle that adversity? Because that's the truth, right? That's reality here. Evan Neal called us all sheep last year. He couldn't handle that type of brute hostility and criticism. And I think that it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And unfortunately, it tainted his relationship with the fans. And once the fans turn on you, there's no coming back. There's no coming back. I mean, any sport in New York, guys, not just the Giants, man. The Jets fans turned on Zach Wilson, ended up becoming a bust. The Knicks fans turned on whoever the hell isn't playing well for the Knicks over the last decade. We know that they boo the Knicks if they're not playing well. Thankfully, we have Jalen Brunson to save us from the pitfalls of epitome. But, you look at, for example, the Yankees, Joey Gallo, Giancarlo Stanton. You want to talk about guys getting booed? Half of the guys aren't even on the Yankees anymore, or half of them are stuck because of the contract and no trade clauses. It happens in every single sport in New York, guys. They get ripped apart to shreds. Can Caleb Williams handle that adversity? That's what the Giants are going to... I don't know if he can. This is a total conjecture, but the Giants are going to be trying to test him to see if he can. How are you going to handle that type of hostility? How are you going to be on social media? Caleb Williams is very active on social media. How is he going to respond to people adding him and telling him there's a piece of absolute trash because he fumbled the ball 3 times in one game because Micah Parsons is too good? You know what I mean? How is he going to handle it? How is Jaden Daniels going to handle it? The one reason I love Jaden Daniels is because he handles that really well. He is a really good, humble dude. Not to say that Caleb Williams isn't. I just like Jaden Daniels' personality and character a lot because he's just humble. He's the first one in, last one out. He has that type of mentality, that work ethic. I love him for that. Caleb could have that too. He's a little bit different of a person, a little bit different of a personality. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad football player. He's not going to work in New York. But I think that the character element of any individual player has become a really big focal point for the Giants over the last couple of years. We've seen many players freak out and leave. Many players get traded because of this or that. They do a lot of work developing that portion of the character aspect. And I think the Giants don't want the face of their franchise. John Mara doesn't want the face of their franchise being a problematic person. So that's going to be an interesting situation. That's the most important part of the meetings for me. Not because they're doing the due diligence, not because of this, because of that. They're trying to figure out, can you handle the hostility of being a New York Giant? And guys, if you're a fan of the Giants, if you're a fan of this team, wow, the fans are hostile. The fans are aggressive here. Like they will tear you to shreds. And I think that you need to have the right people at the right positions to handle that type of stuff. So, what is your thoughts on that? In terms of Caleb Williams, I don't know if he will or won't pan out. I don't know if he will or won't pass those tests the Giants throw at him with flying colors. But I'll tell you one thing. People do have concerns over that. That is a concern that people have about Caleb Williams, that he's a little bit egotistical, a little bit out there, a little bit emotional. He may not react well to it. So I don't know that for a fact. I'm just throwing it out there. What do you think about that?
Listen, it's a concern. I understand why it is, but as I was kind of saying earlier, us as fans can't make those determinations. We can't truly judge these players as people because we don't know them and we haven't been in the locker rooms with them and we haven't been in the combine interview rooms with them. But what I will remind fans is these conversations about Caleb Williams, they do echo the conversations that we had about Kayvon Thibodeau last year. We heard a lot of conversations about Kayvon Thibodeau takes plays off, is too full of himself, is not interested in playing football, is more interested in stuff off the field and business adventures and all that kind of stuff. We heard all these things about Kayvon Thibodeau. We've heard these things about players in the past. More often than not, they're overblown. It's the media pumping things and fans jumping to conclusions because, again, we don't know who these players are as people. And this is the opportunity for the New York Giants to say, okay, is Caleb Williams the problem like some fans and some media analysts think he is? Or is he the solution like we think he is as a player? And that's what they're going to determine by interviewing with him. Because think about when the Giants interviewed Kayvon Thibodeau. We heard so much discourse about how Thibodeau wasn't a team player, didn't play through the whistle, and didn't care too much about getting better as a football player. And we heard that the Giants weren't interested in drafting him because they thought there were too many red flags off the field. Well, then the Giants interviewed him at the Combine, asked him some questions. He went viral because he nailed those questions and had all of the best answers. And in that interview, when they finally released that footage later on after they drafted him, and of course the New York Giants took him with the 5th overall pick. And in my opinion, in large part due to that interview. The impression that I've gotten from that interview for the New York Giants is that they were blown away by Kayvon Thibodeau, the person, not just the player. Even though the player was excellent at Oregon, he had all the tools and traits to be an excellent edge rusher at the NFL level. It was when they interviewed him and he blew them away as a person that the Giants decided they wanted to take him with the 5th overall pick. So that's kind of what I would pull from for Giants fans to think about when you're talking about Caleb Williams or maybe even Drake May or Jaden Daniels. You got questions about who they are off the field. Again, we don't know who these players are off the field, and we can't know unless you happen to play for USC, and you were in the locker room with Caleb Williams. Then maybe you have an opportunity to make a more informed opinion. But for the majority of Giants fans, you can't make an informed opinion, so you do have to leave that one to the experts. You can watch the film, you can watch the highlights, you can watch the lowlights, and you could say, okay, I don't like this player, I don't like his playing style, I don't think he's going to succeed at the NFL level, but you can't just watch these interviews that they do with the media or read these rumors on social media or back-end forums online and then determine whether or not he's a good person. You just can't know that. But the Giants can figure that out through their interview process, through their research department. That's what they're doing now at the NFL Scouting Combine. They're interviewing with Caleb Williams to see if they're going to be impressed with him and blown away in the interview like they were with Kayvon Thibodeau, or if maybe they're going to feel underwhelmed and feel like he isn't a good fit for their media marketing culture, like some other players that I'm sure that they've interviewed with in the past. So that's really the main thing for me with the Combine. And I think that Kayvon Thibodeau comparison is a strong one because it is a very similar conversation and narrative being built for Caleb Williams now as it was for Kayvon Thibodeau a year ago. And again, I don't have an opinion on Caleb Williams. What he's said in interviews, he wants to cuddle with his dog. I don't care. Okay, sure, that's fine. It doesn't make a difference to me. And again, I just think that Giants fans need to just leave this one to the experts. When Joe Schoen interviews him, if Joe Schoen likes him and thinks that he can get along well with him, if Brian Daboll thinks he can have a solid working relationship with him, then so be it. Let's have that working relationship. Let's go win some Super Bowls, hopefully, right? That's really what it is at the end of the day. And again, it's not to say that some players can't change and get better at certain things, and that can include their personality at the next level. Some players might enter the NFL a little bit immature and not ready to be that leader, and then they develop into that. And I think that you could point to Eli Manning in a way as one of those players, because Eli Manning I mean, it's 20 years ago now, but when he was drafted by the Giants, Giants fans freaking hated him. NFL fans at large freaking hated Eli Manning because they thought he was immature and they thought he was a diva because he refused to play for a specific team and he was a very quiet kid. He wasn't a very vocal leader when he got to the New York Giants. Fast forward 20 years later, he's got 2 Super Bowls. He's considered one of the best leaders that the New York Giants ever had because he led by an excellent example. He wore a Walter Payton Man of the Year patch towards the end of his career because of the way that he leads as an example leader and for the stuff that he did off the field. And we all know all the work that he's done in media now because he is a very personable person and he is just a very good guy who does a lot of good things off the field. So it's really just specific to each player and each personality. But with the Giants, you just have to trust them to go through those interview processes and find the guy off the field that fits for them. So I think Kayvon Thibodeau is a situation you can pull from. Eli Manning is a situation where I don't think that he was the most mature player when he entered the NFL. And I think he had a lot of that diva narrative surrounding him. But as he grew, as he matured and became a leader, he became exactly what the New York Giants needed him to be. And now he's going to be hopefully a Hall of Famer in 2025 after winning the Giants 2 Super Bowls. So I'm not saying that Caleb Williams, if the Giants end up landing him, he's going to win us 2 Super Bowls. What I'm saying is he might be a little immature when he enters the NFL. That's okay. How old is he? 21, 22? Of course he's going to be a little immature. But if he continues to grow and develop in that environment and the Giants foster the proper culture for him, he will eventually turn into a leader. You could say that for pretty much any player, that it takes them some time. They're entering the NFL at a young age. By the time they leave the NFL, hopefully they've matured and become solid leaders. That's what you're always hoping for. Now, the final aspect of this equation, Alex, that I do want to discuss is the potential trade package, because we have read a lot about different trades and different mock trades and everything. And I know that there was one on NFL.com. We posted it on our Fireside Giants Instagram and social media channels, where the Giants basically gave up 3 first-round picks, 1 second-round pick, and 1 third-round pick to move up to number 1 overall. Now, I guess I'll just kind of ask you, do you think that's an overpay? Do you think that's too much? Do you have like a certain number where you're like, I won't give up this amount of first round picks? And then kind of the other half of this question, we've discussed this in the past couple of episodes where future draft picks probably don't matter much to Joe Shane. So I kind of want to hear you expand on that idea a little bit.
Well, as I've been saying for months, guys, I think that Joe Shane has 2 years maximum to get this right. He doesn't have 2 years to build a perfect roster. He has 2 years to find a quarterback that's going to elevate the roster he has and continue to build around him. Trading up to the first overall pick is going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to cost you probably a minimum of 3 first-round picks. That includes this year and the next 2, and the next 2 first-round picks, obviously. I would do that without hesitating. Why? Because I could break down the money for you again. The Giants are going to have like $75 million next year. You get $30 million, right? $30 million in cap savings from Daniel Jones not being here in 2025 and 26. That $30 million is a 5-year contract to, rather that $30 million pays for the first year of a really good player on a new contract. Pays for a couple of really good players on a new contract. Obviously we're talking about just that year allocation of cap space. But, the truth is I think the financial allotment the Giants will save and have available to them will cover up a lot of the draft capital that we do lose. In a perfect scenario, we move up to 3, give up 1 first-round pick, and we land Jaden Daniels. That would be like my dream scenario. But look, draft capital doesn't mean anything if we can't develop these players. And the Giants, we've spent draft capital out of our ass, guys. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal. How many of these guys have to flop for us to realize that we're not developing the talent correctly? Not to mention Kadarius Phoney. How many times do we have to go through these same motions to say, look, we might as well trade the draft capital for a top quarterback prospect because most of our first round picks are not panning out anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous that I have to sit here and make this argument over and over again. And I know people are obsessed with the draft capital, obsessed with the first round picks. Guys, most of them don't produce the way they're supposed to. Half of them haven't even panned out. Some of them aren't even on the team anymore over the last 5 years. Saquon's about to leave. Daniel Jones is going to end up leaving after next season. Kadarius Toney's already gone. He's about to leave the whole league, let alone the team. You know what I mean? Like, how many times we got to go through this to finally realize that the draft capital is just capital until you turn the player into a star, right? If the Giants find a quarterback who could be a star at the most important position of football, you give up the damn draft capital because that's the most important position. And this is one of the deeper drafts we've seen at the quarterback position over the last couple of years. And if you want to throw another variable on top of it, Joe Schoen has his back pressed up against the wall, and so does Brian Dable. They need to produce. Is there any evidence that they're going to get fired? No, but if you want to look at the writing on the wall, how much of a leash do they get? How much time do they get to build a team that can beat Dallas in Arlington? How much time do they get to beat a team like the Eagles when they're at full capacity in Philadelphia? Can we even win at freaking MetLife? No, we cannot. So you got to go and find the quarterback who can win you those games. That can Jaden Daniels use 70-yard rush down the field in Arlington to win against Dallas. They can Caleb Williams 65 flick of the wrist, sling it across his body, across the field to an open Jalen Hyatt to win the game against the Eagles in Philadelphia. You need those players to win games, win big games. Daniel Jones cannot win these big games. He never has. If you want to point to the one Minnesota win against arguably the worst defense in the history of the NFL, please, by all means, go point to that one single game that he had a great performance in to justify keeping him for another 2 years, 3 years at a $50 million cap hit with no money and a bunch of draft capital that we continue to have to build the 49ers roster around Daniel Jones for him to be good. And even then, who knows? He could have another neck injury in his career. It could end tomorrow. The logic is all on the table. I don't need to explain it to everybody. I know you guys see it too. But for the people that don't see it, it's evident. It's obvious. It's there. We obsess over draft capital, but it's just draft capital until we find the players that actually succeed and produce. You go for the quarterback because he could change the course of your franchise. Kayvon Thibodeau is not changing the course of the franchise, even if he ends up becoming a superstar. And that's the argument I'll point to. Dexter Lawrence, superstar. We're not winning games with Dexter Lawrence. Andrew Thomas, superstar. We're not winning games with Andrew Thomas. Deontay Banks could be a superstar. We're not winning games because of Deontay Banks. But if you go out and get a damn quarterback and he becomes a superstar, you're winning games because of that damn superstar quarterback. That's the fact of the matter. That's why you spend the draft capital. Because even if those other draft picks pan out, and it's not a quarterback, you're still not winning football games. And you're still not winning Super Bowls because Patrick Mahomes is going to beat your ass in the Super Bowl anyway. So sorry for the very passionate response here, but the truth of the matter is the quarterback position, unless you figure it out, you're dead in the water. It doesn't matter how good your team is. So I think that's the paramount argument. You have to find that guy. And look, the truth is we have a chance to do it right now, and I think that we have to take that chance if the opportunity arises.
And I'm in agreement with you. And again, I just to kind of hammer that point home, Joe Schoen does not care about a 2025 draft pick if he doesn't have a job in 2025. So I do believe that he's going to kind of do what you were saying, make sure that he gets that quarterback right, because that's going to save him his job. That's going to change this franchise. That's going to make the New York Giants a winning team, is if they do sacrifice those assets and get that quarterback that transforms this team, transforms their offense, and just becomes that absolute superstar for Big Blue, which the Giants haven't had at the quarterback position since Eli Manning, arguably. I mean, maybe ever. Have they ever had the quarterback that was an absolute superstar, top player in the NFL? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe this is the opportunity for them to finally get that player and win some Super Bowls, hopefully. That's what we all want. Or at least just some more regular season games. Like, F it. I know we always jump to Super Bowls because that's the end goal for every NFL team. You want to win Lombardi trophies. But God damn it, guys, as a Giants fan, I just want to win more regular season games at this point. Like, please, can I get a 10-win season? Can I get a 12-win season for that matter? Can I make the playoffs and get past the second round? Can I go to the NFC Conference Championship game? Can I just have an opportunity, to get to the Super Bowl? I just want the chance. I just want to be a good enough team to be competitive in the playoffs. The New York Giants haven't been that for a very long time. Of course, winning one playoff game against a historically bad Minnesota defense, still a great moment. Love it, feel great about it, but come on, guys. It's time for the Giants to make that move, take a risk. Yeah, it might blow back in their face, and it might come back to bite them. And that'll cost Joe Schoen and Brian Dable their jobs. They know that. But let's take the risk. Let's take the chance and hope that it all works out in the end. Because if not, you're just going to keep being okay with mediocrity and settling for this and settling for that. And that's not the way that you win in the NFL. That's not the way that you build a contending roster. So I'm ready, man. This has been a fun offseason so far, and technically the offseason hasn't even gotten started. It doesn't start until March 11th is the start of the new league year, when free agency opens up and the legal tampering period begins, and then of course it ramps right up into the NFL draft. But this combine should be interesting. We'll of course continue to update you guys on who the Giants are interviewing and meeting with, which players are maybe standing out and rising up draft boards, and maybe the Giants could look into selecting, whether it be in the first round or the seventh round, and everything else in between. And of course, we know that the negotiations with Xavier McKinney and Saquon Barkley, those are going to start this week at the Combine as well. So of course, we got a lot to update you guys on right here on Fireside Giants, and we will continue to do so and provide you with more conversations and debates all about these draft prospects and the different moves that the Giants can and will make in this upcoming offseason. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.